Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in on you. Hope everybody has had a great start to your week. I hope everybody is having a great day. Remember what I always say, no matter where you're at, no matter what you're going through, no matter how it may seem now, if you're still breathing, you're still in the fight. I'm here to talk to you about something today I'm passionate about. Haven't really spent a whole lot of time talking about it lately because I've actually been writing a book on it. Started talking about the book last year, started on it, then a bunch of things happened personally and professionally that I had to address. And so I just got back to it. We are almost to the point now where I'll be finishing it this month and releasing it, published and ready. The name of the book is The War on Black Wealth, Chasing the American Dream. And I'm sitting up and I'm writing and I'm in a particular place and I'm sitting up and I'm going, I think this is something I really need to share. It's something that a number of my business associates and colleagues have come together to address amongst ourselves, preparing for what we believe is going to be a very challenging time, and how we're going to hedge and protect ourselves, and how we're actually going to improve our position financially during this time. And I'm sitting up and I'm thinking, what is it that I can share about this that people who don't understand what we understand can still take it and start somewhere? I'm hoping that people get this book. And if you want to order the book now, the link is in the description box. Before I forget, this very important segment is brought to you by the 7 day online business launch. It's something else one of my companies is doing. It's something that I have done very successfully over the last 12 to 13 years, and that's launch businesses online. And I'm teaching people how to do that. If you just want to read about it, learn more about it, and find out how it may be helpful to you, that information's in the description box. Also, the routine, support the work we do. Got all of that stuff out of the way because I really want to talk to you about this, and I want this to be the primary focus. So I did what I had to do, got all that stuff out of the way, and I want to talk to you. One of the things that I had to learn early on, if I was going to be successful in business, is to understand finance and economics. Not just in the way that they teach it in school, but in the way that it moves and the things that move under the undercurrent. One of the things that you have heard me say repetitively about the condition of the Black collective is that we find ourselves in these situations because we don't understand how things work. Well, there are some things in play that I'll tell you that the average American doesn't understand how they work. And because they don't, everybody's easily manipulated, herded, and moved. And most of the moving is done by the wealthy elite, and most people fall prey to it. Most people are subject to it, and it allows for easy movement and for the power dynamic to remain the same. Once again, your power is represented by your ability to move on your own without having to depend on anyone. We know that the best route to power is wealth. Well, how wealth is defined is extremely important. What we know is that there's an extremely broad wealth gap between whites in this country and blacks, just based whites and blacks. We're not talking wealthy elite. We're talking whites and blacks. We're talking about a difference between about 177,000 median household wealth for whites and about 17,000 median household wealth. Um, Sorry about that. That was extremely important. Um, the importance to understand about that is it's not as clean cut and dry as people make it seem. Hello, sweet tea. It's not as clean cut and dry as people will make it seem. There are all kind of different ideas floating around of why whites are more wealthy than blacks. And number one is they got a 200 or 300 year head start. They also got a great deal of free labor. They also went through a bunch of things that I cover in the book, from uh, black codes to redlining, all of which negatively impacted the ability of blacks to collectively develop wealth and pass that wealth down generationally, which is the execution of projected power. What I want to talk about specifically today is going to be something that's probably not discussed a lot. It's probably something that a lot of people don't know. I'm pretty sure some of you guys are going to know because you guys are real sharp and you keep up, you read, you understand. But I want to bring it to the forefront. While my associates and colleagues and partners, the ones that we have come together in this group to talk about some things, have gone very deep into a rabbit hole. I'm not here to take you down that rabbit hole yet. What I am here to do is to talk to you about something you need to understand about what's happening. What we're doing right now is we're flirting with what we assume will probably be at least a partial collapse of the stock market, which is the least of our concerns if we understand what's going on. What we should be more concerned about is the collapse of the US dollar. The US dollar is considered an international reserve currency. You can trade the US dollar anywhere. The reason that the United States has been able to sustain the level of lifestyle that we have been able to sustain is because we control the international reserve currency. Everything is based on and value against the US dollar. Let me explain to you why that's a problem. While eventually we're going to have to talk about 1913 and we're going to have to talk about 1933, I want to focus on 1971. 1971 was the final blow, which started in, I want to say 1913 with the creation, I could be wrong, 1913 with the creation of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve Bank, while labeled the Federal Reserve as a privately owned bank by some of the most elite and wealthy families on the planet, the Fairchilds, the Rockefellers, and others, Normans, and so forth. We're not going to get into that. This is not about conspiracy theories. We want to talk about the Federal Reserve existed. Before that, it did not exist. And there's a reason that it does exist. The moment that it existed, that became the creation of what we call currency, paper money, coin money, whatever you want to call it. That currency is actually supposed to be a promissory note or a representation of something of value. We have to understand that through time, there have been what is considered money is the thing that is of value that can be exchanged for services or goods or whatever. So, if you go back to the creation of currency, let's just say there was a guy who was a goldsmith and he had safes to store gold in, and everybody exchanged gold. But people found out that if I want to buy something for gold, it's hard. You're lugging all this stuff around. So the guy said, I tell you what, you store your gold with me. I give you a promissory note for your gold. Okay, if you give me 10 pounds of gold, I'll give you a promissory note that says, hey, you have 10 pounds of gold. Now, what happened is people started taking their promissory notes and negotiating them for things without actually having to have the gold. The people they negotiated it with took that money and then took it back to the goldsmith and either collected it or had it exchanged and put into their name. So there was this bank keeping going on, even, we're talking thousands of years ago, but that's going on. But this is the creation of currency. Currency was never the thing of value. It was the representation of the thing of value. And you could only negotiate the currency of the value of the thing you own. So if you had 20 pounds of gold, you couldn't write on a piece of paper 30 pounds of gold and negotiate it because you didn't have the 30 pounds of gold. So in other words, your paper currency was basically on a gold standard, meaning that you had to have the gold to back it up. And up until 1933, it was a set thing that you could negotiate gold, everything like that. In 1933, we were taken off of that, and actually owning gold was made illegal. Owning and exchanging gold up until a certain point was made illegal. It made more difficult. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so for that to 71, President Nixon, took America off the gold standard completely, meaning that the US dollar was no longer backed by the gold standard. There are a number of reasons why that happened. One is there were a lot of things that the US was spending money on, trying to get to the moon in the 60s, paying for the Vietnam War in the 60s and the 70s. We were accumulating a great deal of debt. We were in deficit, and the US deficit was growing, and we needed to have more money. The problem is we didn't have the gold to back any more money. We were the international reserve standard, but we didn't have the gold to back it. People were starting to realize we don't think you got all the gold for all the stuff that you're purchasing. So what happens is Nixon takes us off the standard, and it's supposed to be temporary. Unfortunately, it was not temporary. It's been 50 years. So then what happens? Well, when you come off the standard, now what is valuing the dollar? Well, some people will tell you that the dollar is a fiat currency, meaning that it doesn't have value. It's just something that's written on paper and you're spending it. And here's the problem. What is creating inflation? Everybody talks about inflation. Well, inflation is when you have a situation where something is going up in price for a specific reason. It can be driven by a bunch of different things. One of the things that causes inflation is a high demand and a low supply. Well, what happens is when you consistently print currency, and for a lot of reasons, one of the reasons we know that a lot of currency has entered into the American economy, and I say currency, I mean dollars being printed, has entered into the American economy over the last several years is through stimulus. First, we were stimulating big corporations, and then we start trying to stimulate individuals. Why? Because we need them to buy. Well, why is it so important for Americans to buy? Why is it so important for Americans to purchase things? Because it's not actually fiat currency in the purest sense, meaning that nothing's backing it. It's actually backed by US debt. So the consumers have to actually spend more money than they earn. The accumulation of debt is then valued and purchased and held. So the economy is actually stimulated by getting the consumer to be comfortable enough within the economy to spend money. The problem comes in a couple of different ways. Well, we're constantly printing money. Well, on a global level, it's becoming a problem because we don't have the gold to back it. It's not even on a gold standard. The problem is, as more people become suspect, the challenge of keeping the dollar stable enough to hold up is going to be a problem. That's where we're at now. The biggest fear shouldn't be the collapse of the stock market. It should be the collapse of the dollar, because once the dollar collapses, here's what's happened over the last 50 years after everything is off the gold standard, and the deindustrialization of inner cities in America and a bunch of other things. And I'm going through this real quickly, and it's not going to be a one-off. I'm going to come back and I'm going to break down each of these things, but I'm just trying to give you an understanding of why this is important and why I decided to share it with you. Look, here's the thing. You've got this currency, right? But it's not backed by anything, so it really doesn't have power. It's a promissory note. That's what you have to look. When somebody gives you a $10 bill, that $10 bill used to represent $10 worth of gold. And the thing is, U.S. citizens could not redeem that promissory note for gold. But up until 71, anyone who had U.S. dollars outside that were not U.S. citizens or U.S. corporations could redeem it. And that was creating a problem because it's tapping into your gold stores, right? So they had to break that off. They had to stop it. Well, then it became the accumulation and the collection of U.S. debt. The problem is when you have all this money being printed, the more you print, the more people have in their hand, the more people want to spend. The problem is you're driving up demand. Why? The more money I got, the more I want to buy. The problem is we don't have the ability to create it. If we were to go to the gold standard, the dollar would crash and it wouldn't be able to support anything. It would be worthless. And all of the money you have cash is jacked. That's why I tell people, as many people as I possibly can, now's the time to start accumulating what I call real money. Real money is things that hold value, that if necessary can be exchanged for the things you absolutely need and want to have and whatever. And what I would consider to be real money would be foreign stocks, because U.S. stocks, while the crash of the dollar would probably drive the stock market back up, the value of the stock market would be jacked because it would be based on U.S. dollars. So you might have $15 million, but let's say a pair of shoes might cost you $5 million, because that's just how horrible the value of the dollar can become. A good representation of that would be Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwe standard of currency witnessed a situation where the currency died and the stock market took off. It never actually died. It actually took off. There are a bunch of millionaires and even billionaires in Zimbabwe, but they can't afford jack because of Zimbabwe currency. Forget what it's called, but it's worth jack. Well, that's what can happen to the U.S. and the dollar. And see, we've been lulled asleep as being this superpower, and we've been able to manipulate and control. And I am not underestimating the ability to continue to do that, but it's only so long that you can build and stack things on a house of cards before the cards collapse. And it's, to me, a matter of time. So what do? You have to accumulate real currency. That's why I tell people, don't sell appreciating assets for currency. Why? Because the currency becomes devalued and there's no way to claim anything on it. If the dollar crashes, you could have $100,000 in the bank and you have nothing. If you have $100,000 worth of gold, you still have $100,000 worth of gold, and that gold can be valued in any other currency around the world, and you can still exchange it for goods. The problem is no other country is in a situation where their currency is the standard. So in other words, nobody else is printing anything. They earn their currency. We've been printing currency. We didn't have to earn it. We just print it. Now, I'm not talking about the average person. I'm talking about the economy. Just print it. Banks are being constantly bailed out with what? Fiat money. They're just printing it. They're just printing it and saying, here it is. Where's it coming from? They're printing it. The problem is the more you print, the more of anything you have, the less valuable it becomes. The more rare something is, the more expensive it becomes. It's real simple, basic economics. But the game is being played by the Federal Reserve. Whenever you hear that the Federal Reserve is lowering interest rates, everybody gets excited about that. The problem is, the lowering of those interest rates going to ultimately end up being something that drives up inflation? And in this case, absolutely exactly what's happening. In a place like Texas, where I live, where you could 10 years ago, you could get a 3,500 square foot home for under 500,000. Now you got 2,700 square foot homes, 350, 400,000. Why? Because number one, inflation, based on a number of different things, the value of the dollar is down. So if the value of the dollar is down, it takes more dollars to buy the same thing of value. The other thing, we have a problem with all of these different mechanisms that go into creating houses. So number one is a lot of businesses, a lot of builders closed during the last collapse because the market hit most heavily was the real estate market. So a lot of contractors and builders closed. So what happened? The building of homes slowed down. Wasn't nobody buying them. Well, now that there's a demand for them, now that there's a demand for houses, there are not enough houses, and builders can't get back in the swing and the flow again. Not only because we don't have enough builders, supplies are more expensive than they used to be. There's a supply shortage. Well, there's a shortage. There's a rate hike on everything that's cost. Have you noticed? It's something I notice every time I go in the grocery store, that what I used to be able to get for $100, I'm getting a fraction of it. It's because the prices are going up to level out and to offset inflation. So the value of the dollar drops, but the value it costs to farm and fix everything doesn't. So you're getting the cost passed on to you in the hike of the cost of food. And your dollar is dwindling. So in other words, again, what are hard assets and what is real money? Hard assets, property. If you got property, hold on to it. It's going to appreciate in value. Plus, it's going to hold, and it's the one stable thing across all mechanisms, all forms of assets that will hold. It's going to fluctuate. It's going to go up and down, but everybody needs property. Everybody's looking for property. Property is always going to be something that will stabilize you. You're going to find that all the old money is in property. Okay. Next, foreign stocks. Why foreign? Because they're not going to be balanced and held by the US dollar. So you want foreign stocks. You want to invest in companies that can withstand the inflationary strike that's going to hit. What do I mean? Inflationary strike, as I define it, is when you get hit so hard that the cost of living goes up so extensively that people have to make buying choices. See, Americans on a grand scale we haven't had to do that in years. Now, we had a hard time back in 2006, 2007. That's nothing compared to what we could be facing right now. You would have to go back to the 1930s to see the kind of shift in lifestyle that could take place. And so what happens is, in this, you're going to have a situation where people are going to have to make choices on buying what I need versus what I want, because what I need has gone up so extensively that I can't afford the luxuries of what I want. So businesses that are going to survive this are businesses that can withstand or pass off the increase of doing business to their consumers, because their consumers have to spend with them. Grocery stores are going to survive. Why? Because people have to eat, and you can look and you can see the things you need. So those are the types of companies you want to put stock into, but you want to make sure you're doing it in a safe market. The U.S. market is probably not safe in a lot. There are going to be some companies that are going to survive this. You can look up and say, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not selling anything. I'm not trying to get anybody to invest anything. That's not why I'm here. So I'm not going to give you what I think you should do, because I don't want to be responsible, but I know what I'm doing. And there are some U.S. stocks that I'm going to hold on to, because at some point we're going to recover. We're going to figure this out. Too many brilliant minds not to. But that initial hit in the average person will not easily recover. It may be generations before the average person recovers, but the brilliant mind will figure a way out. We created more millionaires during the Great Depression than any other time before that. Why? Because brilliant minds figure things out. And that's the thing that I want to also tell you. Your greatest asset during this time is going to be your mind. So you need to read, you need to learn, you need to study, you need to understand why currency is not king, why cash is not king. They've been telling you that. They've got you chasing the American dream. They got you wanting to ride the best whip, do this, live it. But what they're not telling you is that's not where your wealth lies. Your wealth lies in those assets that hold value, even in difficult times. So you need gold and silver. Never going to go wrong with gold and silver. Buy gold and silver. Buy it from a company that can be trusted. And I'm not going to give out any names, but do your research. I may give out names in the future of some companies that I believe that are good exchanges. But what you need to do is you also need to be paying attention to the international currency exchange, the Forex market, the foreign exchange market. How is the dollar holding up? Where's the dollar at? How is it competing against the yen? How is it competing against the Australian dollar? How is it competing against the British sterling? How is it competing against the euro? These pairs that are pretty much the top 17, but definitely the top 5. How is the dollar faring? What is going on? Pay attention to it. Look at how other markets are moving. Pay attention to what's being said. Listen to politics, not for the sake of who's your favorite, not for any particular party, but what are they talking about when it comes along the lines of economics? What anything you hear about the Federal Reserve, you need to listen to, because that's where the big money plays are being made. That's where the big money decisions are being made. And you got to understand that that's a part of the global banking system. And that's where all of the money decisions are being made. And ultimately, that's going to hold your financial future in its hands if you don't make moves. How can you immediately do this? Start looking into the acquisition of hard assets, and understanding also that one of the ways that you can sort of hedge and buffer some of the hit of this is to acquire and be invested in companies that will have the mechanisms or infrastructure to survive what's going to happen to the dollar. And those are going to be companies that are going to have a demand. Here's the problem. And I don't want to jump all over the place, so I'm trying to stay on focus, and then I'll get back and talk on each topic over the next week or so as the book prepares to come out. See, what's about to happen is, in a time that most people panic, is a time to be very careful, very quiet, and very aware of what's going on, because that's your time to make your move. You'll find out that over the course of the last 100 years, more people developed and increased their wealth. Wealthy people increased their wealth during the market downturns. Why? Because that's considered crisis, and most of your big hitters are crisis investors. What does that mean? They wait for people to panic, they wait for prices to drop, and they buy at discounted prices, knowing that at some point these stocks recover. Uh, this is a little bit different in the sense that now you're going to find out that either one or two things is going to happen in this particular time. Either we're going to close the wealth gap because of all of the uncertainty and the uh, volatility of the economic market in the US, or we're going to see it widen. If we see it widen, it's going to be because they see it, they understand it, and they know more about it than we do, and they're taking better action. If we close it, it's because we seize the opportunity to move differently than we've moved in the past. Uh, I think about myself. When I think about myself, I think about how maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I could have taken a different route and it probably would have put me in a more cash heavy situation. And right now, I would probably be looking for ways to put that cash somewhere. Why? Because I looked at a more steady way of increasing my net worth, which was developing businesses that have the ability to evolve into need and demand that can be served, that can service in more than one area. Everything that I do, I can do outside of the US with people who are not US citizens. And I purposely built my company and my brand so that when necessary, I can just sit down and shut down in the US and still be okay because I still have value outside of the US. And a lot of the things I do, people don't realize or even aware of. It's because I took time to do that. I understand that. And I've been talking about debt-based economy forever because that's how they get us. They need us to be consumers. They need us to be consumer minded. They need us to see shiny things and want them because that keeps us spending more money than we make. And that keeps the economy afloat. If inflation gets so bad that it stalls out the spending, then the value of the dollar tanks and we have a problem. But what we are witnessing is the fact that they flooded the economy with so much fiat currency that there's a lot of money to spend and there's not a lot of stuff to buy. And so the prices of stuff is going up again, driving down the value of the dollar. And there are a bunch of other different things at play. Again, I can't get into it all. What I want you to get into is there's a couple of things I want to leave you with. Understanding the difference between currency and money. Currency is the paper that you get when you cash your check or you go to the bank and you make a withdrawal. That's not money, that's currency. It's a representation of money. It's supposed to have something that represents that you have a value. So theoretically, before 1971, if you had $100, it meant that you had a stake in $100 worth of gold. While you weren't allowed to negotiate and actually take ownership of that gold, that money was backed by that gold. Now, people who had the US dollar who were not US citizens could literally say, I want the gold. That became the problem because the US had printed more money than it had gold. And it could not have people coming in to negotiate that currency or that promissory note for the actual gold. It didn't have it. So Nixon took it off the gold standard. And what that allowed us to do at the time was just print money on demand. Whatever we need, we print money on demand. We are never, ever out of money. You're wondering how we can fund so many wars. We're just printing money. The problem is eventually you got to pay the note. Yes, Dre Adams, I am discussing fiat money. And so eventually you got to pay the note. You got to pay the note. That's like anything. You're floating it, you're floating it, you're floating it, you're floating it. And you're out there and you just print money and you're buying up everything. Eventually, creditors come calling. Now, someone asked me, what does something like this mean for, say, for instance, homeowners? Well, as the value of the dollar drops, it's going to create an opportunity. This is what I'm talking about. It's going to create an opportunity as the value of the dollar drops. If you can have access to enough real value in money in whatever way it is, gold, silver, foreign currency, whatever. You're going to be able to pay your homes off in a fraction of what you would have been able to pay. Inflation is not good for creditors. Why? Because the value of the dollar drops. And when you recover something in that time, you get very little for it when you resell it. So you lose money in the sense of what you invested at the time, value wise, versus what you get when you reclaim something that wasn't paid. So if I foreclose on a home and the dollar was worth 80 cents, and that it's been a long time, worth 80 cents at that time, and it's dropped down to 20 cents, then I lose 60 cents on each dollar by foreclosing. At the same time, you can now pay that off for 20 cents on a dollar, or 60 cents less on a dollar than what you actually had it financed for. So you can walk from underneath a debt a lot quicker. The thing is, are you going to be positioned economically and financially to do that? Are you going to be positioned? The thing is, what you want is property. You want it. You want it. You want. I cannot stress that enough. You want it. You want gold. You want property. You want foreign stocks. You want assets that are going to stand up against what's going to happen to the dollar. So you don't want anything that's going to be directly associated with the dollar, because it's not going to be worth a whole lot. So again, the stock market, it probably shoot up if that happens. But again, it can be through the roof, and it's really not going to matter, because the stocks, say for instance, a stock goes from $100 a share to 20,000 a share. Well, the truth of the matter is, because the dollar has been devalued so much, it's really only worth $20 a share of what the original value was. So it's actually decreased in value. The market has shot up because the cost of getting it has gone up, because the value of the dollar is almost zero. So in other words, if it costs 100 pennies and now the value of the dollar is down from 100 pennies to 2 pennies, you're going to have to pay what, 50 times more than you would have had paid for it when the value of the dollar was still strong. Hadn't been strong in a while, but it's definitely taking a beating now. It's definitely highly volatile. That's what happened when you're working with fiat currency, something that does not have a backing. That's one of the reasons why Muammar Gaddafi was killed. Was his idea would have sent the US dollar into a tailspin almost immediately. He was talking about bringing some of the most gold heavy African nations together to create a unified currency that will be backed by the gold, and they have plenty of it. That would have been a problem. You got to understand, it is most likely that JFK was killed because of trying to end that dominance in the manipulation of the dollar and the gold standard. Dre asks a question, says, I could never wrap my head around how gold would be valuable if everything crashed. Wouldn't other resources like food, medicine, etc., have more value than gold? Everything is valuable based on perception. Gold has always been considered a rare and precious metal. It also has medicinal purposes. It also has a bunch of other things, but it has a historical value that can be traded. And on a level, though, you have a valid point. If it gets bad enough, we will be trading food and trading whatever for survival. I'm not predicting, I'm not going that deep off into predicting how bad it's going to get based on anything. But what I'm saying is how we see and move and operate and the lifestyles that we have now. If the dollar crashes, we've got a problem, because everything is based on the dollar. And we're not going to be, and the fact that most of the things that we consume are not created in the US, and that you can't spend the dollar to get it. How are you going to get it? Now we're talking about scarcity. We're talking about increase in expense because of scarcity. And then, so It's going to be, I can't afford it. I mean, there are going to be people looking at a loaf of bread who can't afford it because it's $35 a loaf. And that's the reality of it. You play with it long enough and you don't have an exit strategy. Now, when he said that this is temporary, and that would have been an exit strategy and a moving back into it. But what the problem is, it got real good. It got real good for the powers that be to be able to print and just say whatever we want to do. We don't really have to have the wealth to do it. We just print money. Everybody is operating on our standards, so we control the global market. We're just going to print money. Well, the problem is people are starting to call in markers. The problem is there are currencies that have stronger standing that are vying. China is offering to allow its currency to be used by many nations and to accept other nations' currency. It's getting real interesting. But the bottom line is everything I think TR DuPont, I don't know how to put, but made a very valid point, is that, and y'all are on two different platforms, so you can't see each other communicating. But he said the primary difference in gold and all the other things that Dre mentioned is that gold is not perishable and is universally acceptable, which is a primary principle of what you would call monetary exchange. Is number one, it's readily available. Number two, people almost anywhere accept it. That's what makes the US dollar so attractive, is that it's globally accepted. You can spend it almost anywhere you go. Whereas in, nobody can come here with, certain currencies and spend it just readily in a store here in the US. You would have to go to a foreign exchange and get US dollars to spend here. Well, the US dollar can be spent pretty much almost anywhere. It's just automatically set into systems for exchange for whatever their monetary value per unit is set at. Here's the thing: is there has to be a reckoning of anything. Nothing goes unsettled forever. We've been playing with the economy for over 100 years, honestly. And there's going to have to be some changes. Those who prepare themselves mentally, those who prepare themselves by making sure they have the assets necessary to get them through the tough times, those who prepare themselves by understanding how they're going to maneuver, how they're going to generate new forms of money outside of the dollar currency and fiat money, are going to be the ones who fare well in this. And now is the time to start preparing yourself. Well, the time to start preparing yourself was a while ago. Nobody was listening. Nobody, I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm not the only one that's been talking about it. I'm not for, there are some people that brought me in that are experts in different areas of this thing, how to construct and protect your assets. One of my business associates that's pretty much spearheading this group that we're in, that's his area of expertise, is structuring trusts and setting up things, how you move and operate within the US, how to tap into other resources that I'm not going to get into that are governmental and not a handout. Just so many different things that you're going to need to operate and move that you need to know. I'm going to do the best I can to be informative and share it with you. A good place to start is with that book. I go all the way back from 1865, and I come up and we talk about all the ways that have been put out there that stop us as a collective from developing wealth, but also how some of our own habits have stopped us, how we view money has stopped us, how we view assets, what we consider to be liabilities versus assets. All of these things work into where we're at and why where we're at and what we need to do about it. These last couple of years have been me positioning myself and preparing myself for what I could see coming, and being able to take as much of a hit as possible, and keep moving. The thing is, you're going to have to get outside of the box. The box was never designed, first of all, to enrich you. If you escape and become rich, but it wasn't designed to enrich you, it was designed to protect the elite, the wealthy elite. The problem is now the box is about to blow up. And so what we need to do is prepare for it. Again, anything can happen. So to say that it's absolutely going to crash, I can't say. What I'm saying is every sign there is says that it can't consistently go the way it's going and the dollar sustained. So how it's going to go. Now, the only way that we save is we go back to the standard. The problem is we go back to the gold standard, the dollar crashes. So all the money that you have in cash, in your bank, in your pocket, worth jack. If I can get anything else across to you now, is to find a way to translate as much of what you hold in cash outside of what you need to move and do about right now, and translate it into something that holds value. Cars don't hold value, homes do. Rare jewels hold value. Now, how valuable they'll be during a very turbulent economic downturn on a global level, uh, I don't know, but long term, things will always recover. They always do. Things are going to come back around and get better. Just like we got past the depression, we'll get past this. But until then, uh, jewels may not be that valuable, or they may be hard to move because not everybody's going to be able to afford them. Precious metals are going to be more easily used because a lot of countries still operate on the gold standard. Also, maybe holding accounts in foreign countries where their currency is safe. It's either underwritten on a standard of uh, something valuable, or it's as close to universally accepted as possible. The euro is holding strong. Uh, might not be a bad place to do a little something. Uh, I got to look into it a little more before I'll speak on it. But these are the things that we need to be aware of. These are the things we need to be talking about. These are the things we need to be sharing. It's good to talk about what celebrities are doing. It's good to talk about everything going on with R. Kelly, if that's what you want to do. It's good to talk about all this other stuff. But none of that stuff is going to feed your family. None of that stuff is going to provide you the level of long-term stability you need to live a comfortable life in this country. So you need to be prepared. I have said this over and over again for years, that we end up in the situations we're in because we don't know how things work. Well, my goal is to come to you and share with you and teach you how things work. Um, Outside of the book, I'm not here to sell you anything. And the book has been in the works for a while. I just was sitting there and I'm going, they need to know this now. Not wait till the book come out and just the people who get the book see it. This is something that everybody needs to see. Is that we are really looking at a serious downturn. I'm just looking at some of the notes of the stuff that I put in the book. Um, I think I've covered what I need to cover now. Come back and I'll break it down and we'll talk about different eras in time and how that worked against us, what we need to do differently now. And again, this is an opportunity to close that gap. How we play the game at this point will determine if we keep trying to play the game the way they have us chasing the American dream, what we're driving, how much money we got in the car, that's not going, how much money we got in the bank, the car we driving, all that. That's not where we're going to get and close the gap. That's the presentation. You'll find out that 90% of millionaires in the US don't even drive what we would consider luxury cars. If you look at the number one car driven by millionaires, it's a Toyota. Now, millionaires don't mean that they have $1 million in currency in the bank. See, that's the difference. That's how we think. We think to be a millionaire, you have to have, no, they have $1 million in net assets. That's how they are declared millionaires. That means what they have of value minus what they owe in debt exceeds $1 million. And I guarantee you, most of that is not currency. They're smarter than that. I have personally invested a lot in the value of my companies because my companies translate outside of the US dollar. And there are some other plays that are made, but you've got to understand how the game is played. The name of the book, the link is in the description box, Dre, but the name of the book is The War on Black Wealth. The subtitle is Chasing the American Dream. And I am excited about it. It's been in the works. It's also exciting too because there are people who literally paid to have space in the book to pay tribute to ancestors and loved ones and their children and everything like that. So literally people are going to be able to see their name in the book and the people that they wanted to honor in the book. And so I'm excited about that. That's the first time I ever did that. I don't know if I do it again, but it was definitely fun. So that's going to be good. Some people actually bought whole pages and put a picture, and some people just a line or two, whatever. But hey, I'm excited about it. But whatever happens, you need to familiarize yourself and you need to do your own research. You need to read, you need to learn. This is something you should be consuming on a daily basis. It's reading and reading more than one side of the coin, more than one side of the story, more than one side of the presentation. No one is absolutely completely right. No one's absolutely completely wrong. Everybody's got angles. Everybody's got interests. And you have to understand that nobody's representing your interests but you. So you're going to have to find all the angles and find out how they serve you. And you're going to put all that together. And unfortunately, you're behind the 8 ball in time. And you're behind the 8 ball in where you stand in the accumulation and holding of wealth. So you've got a lot of work to do. But that's the thing about this thing. Nobody's ever stuck. Nobody's ever stuck where you are. You have the ability and the capacity to move forward. I challenge every person that watches this video. Number one, click the like button, click the subscribe button if you are not already subscribed to this channel. Number three, share this with people because this is the type of stuff we should be consuming. This is the type of stuff that's going to make the difference on how we end up in life, what we pass on to our progeny, what we present outside and down the road. It's really important that that happens. On that note, look, I'm going to get ready to get off of here. You guys have an unbelievable day. And I'll be coming back to you and breaking this down periodically. Matter of fact, we have a meeting today at 6. And I'm pretty sure we're going deeper off into the rabbit hole. We're on a whole nother level of stuff, and it's amazing just how this system is set up to ensure that we don't get where we're trying to go. And because we don't know it, we play right into it most of the time. But there are some answers, and as we gather these answers and we devise plans, I promise you, I'm going to bring them to you, and I'm going to put them right out there to you, and we're going to get somewhere as a people. That's my goal, is to empower my people. And that's why I've done what I've done for years. That's why you've seen me do what I do for years. And I continually do the work in the community, and we have work to do. On that note, I'm out of here. You guys have an unbelievable time the rest of the day, whatever that is. I'm about to get ready to leave the office in about another 40 minutes or so and head to the gym. That's another commitment that I have to myself. And I challenge you to get yourself in the best condition as possible as well. On that note, I'm out of here. You guys have an unbelievable